When it comes to compliance, AI is much stronger than some of the people that's out there that actually looks through these documents. Yes, there needs to be some people looking through some of the documents, but at the same time, there are processes that you've already automated when it comes to compliance that doesn't need to have that step.
This is the Operational Clarity podcast, where we sit down with experienced leaders from the HOA, Strata, and body corporate management industries from around the world to unpack what it really takes to build and run great operations. My name is Robert Hangu, and my guest today is Dilshan Mimanage, joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Dilshan is the founder of Strata Pages, an end-to-end strata management platform powered by AI. Before that, he spent years inside the industry and went from being owner's corporate manager to director of a strata management company. So he's an operator turned founder who has gained deep industry experience before building technology specifically to solve strata managers' pain points. Dilshan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for having me here.
What pushed you from managing owners corporations into building Strata Pages?
I didn't build Strata Pages because I wanted to build software. I was working in Strata for quite some time and started to realize a lot of inefficiencies in the processes that they have, which I've been working on solving for some time. Then later on, build Strata Pages to help managers mitigate some of those issues as well. Industry is starting to become a lot more complex compared to how it used to be. So I think it is important to have those inefficiencies fixed in order to run things smoothly in strata operations these days.
I understand. You mentioned the industry getting more complex. What has changed the most in strata management since you first entered the industry?
I think the biggest change in strata is the expectations of the owners that they have now. They need immediate responses, right? So things have changed in that way. So you need to provide owners instant access to information, get responses to them as fast as possible, have ways to answer their phone calls actively. There's people don't want to wait for anything. So you just want to create that experience seamless. I think that's why it is important to have proper systems in place in order to do that.
I totally agree with that. Your central thesis is that strata managers are not failing because they're bad operators. They're failing because their administrative complexity has outgrown the tools available to them. Now, you've briefly touched upon this by mentioning a few of the processes that have grown more complex, right? Do you see a systemic issue in the industry itself?
In a way, yes. A lot hasn't changed over the years in Strata. Managers tend to still use the legacy systems that used to exist years back, and world has changed and moved away from those. And management itself is really reluctant to change. They tend to stick with what is currently working for them, but they don't understand a lot of frustrations from the owners come as a result of not having proper systems in place. Owners believe that there's no transparency in the industry. That's as a result of them not being able to have access to their numbers, them not receiving their uh, responses directly. So a lot of problems that happens in the industry, and the perception of the industry is tied to what the current strata managers do. There are great operators out there, but there are a lot of operators that does not provide the clarity and the transparency that owners are currently looking for. Not because they want to hide anything, that is because they're still stuck to the processes that they used to do 10 years ago, and the expectations have moved on.
I see. Why do you think that strata managers are reluctant or are slow to adapt new technologies? Why do you think that compared to other industries, they are fairly, let's say, slow to jump onto new technologies? What makes them so?
One thing is they're fairly overwhelmed with the workload that they currently have. So it takes a lot of time for them to do what they currently do. And as a result of it, they don't have time to invest in learning new tools and moving on to new tools. So anything that you introduce, it doesn't have you need to make sure it doesn't feel like technology. It need to combine with what they already do, right? That's the most important thing. So if you're changing everything for them, they find it really difficult to adapt to that. So you need to make sure you understand the current process properly and then streamline that process in a way that they can adapt fairly easily rather than disrupting their day-to-day activities, because they are really busy. And as a result of it, they do understand the new processes are going to bring in efficiencies, but they still don't have the time to invest in doing that. And a lot of businesses are small businesses where you have 3 managers, 4 managers. If one person's going to move away in order to do these technological advancements, then that's probably 600-700 lots that's managed by that person that is going to get the responses. Everything's going to get delayed as a result of it. So that's my personal view on what is stopping them. But there might be other areas such as how much they can invest into this. There is declining margins in profit as well. And as a result of it, they might not want to spend a lot on technology as well. So that's something to be mindful of when you're introducing new technology to the industry as well.
Makes total sense. When you're saying that it's hard for them to both do their work and improve the processes, what are some of the ways you've been doing this when introducing Strata Pages? As in, how do you approach their current processes to do this iterative approach? What have you seen has worked, what hasn't worked? Can you walk us through one of the times when you introduced Strata Pages into their process?
Yeah. So what we generally do in introducing Strata Pages is we try to, like, what we've done is we've had discussions and we've identified how most of the managers operate. So there are a lot of similarities in the processes, but what we need to do is when it comes to automation, people tend to think you automate the exact same process, right? So that is not how things work with AI automation. So you take the process, you remove inefficiencies in between, then you automate the process. So if you automate the exact process, you're going to make probably a 10% gain. And if you remove the additional bottlenecks or any inefficiencies from that process, you're going to get a 10x better process with the automations in place. So that's what we generally do. So how we found it easiest to introduce this is identifying what their day to day looks like and try to introduce a single process at a time, right? Trying to change everything at once. We try to introduce a single process and then move forward from there and then add on the remaining things that then they see the actual value of what is around them. So we automate their inbox, then they see the value of why maintenance needs to be automated, why tasks needs to be automated, how they all tie in. If we overwhelm them with the whole package of what needs to be automated, then it's so hard for them to adapt.
So you're saying that when you're starting with one process, other areas emerge that are connected to this process that need to be automated as well. So in a sense, it's like a web. You start with one point and it goes to, let's say it's connected to other points, so it spreads out. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. So it is like a web. So you start with the biggest pain point of the client, then they realize over time what they can do around that single process as well. Once they realize, then they are more willing to change. So it's just fixing that biggest pain point of the client, that's what opens up their eyes to what can be done from their own. So that's what I've seen a lot of people miss when they try to introduce automations to an industry. They try to sell a whole package or anything like that. So what we try to do is we'll try and get that single process in and then let them guide us on which direction they want to go.
I totally agree. And you just said something interesting, that most managers, they try to translate an existing process into a tool, but they don't question the process. You were saying that if you do that, you'll be only at 10% efficiency, whereas if you redesign the process from the start, you'll be at 10x efficiency. Have you seen situations where Strata managers would just take their process and put it into, let's say, a standard tool? I'm not talking about Strata Pages here. I'm talking about the existing incumbents, the existing players in the industry. Have you stumbled upon Strata managers that you're working with that are using one of these incumbent systems but haven't questioned their process? So maybe it's a two-faced question like, on the one hand, how do they translate their process currently into an incumbent system? And second, do they even question the process itself? Or do they just translate it blindly into the incumbent system?
Yeah, I see that a lot in task management. So they generally, like whatever that they used to do in Excel, they copy and paste that either to Monday.com or any other task management platforms they have, rather than deciding what other steps that they have probably already automated. Like, does this need to go to this person for verification if that process has been automated, right? Like you don't, there are so many things like when it comes to compliance, AI is much stronger than some of the people that's out there that actually looks through these documents. Yes, there needs to be some people looking through some of the documents, but at the same time, there are processes that needs, like that you've already automated when it comes to compliance, that doesn't need to have that step. So when it comes to task automation, I see a lot of managers replicating their Excel sheet into actual task management platform, which actually takes them more time. Um, at the same time, they are pretty much doing exactly what they used to do, just the system looks newer. And they think they are getting an efficiency out of it, but they are missing out on a lot by doing that.
How do you work with them to convince them that there's a better way?
I would probably, when it comes to those sort of processes, as I mentioned earlier, so what I would do is initially sit down with them and try and identify what they currently do. So that by doing that and understanding why, right, then building confidence around, if we are removing a process, there needs to be confidence built around that it achieves the same or 99.9% similar outcome by automation, and removing that step wouldn't impact the compliance element of it. Like Strata itself is a lot about compliance. So you can't remove a process and then run into a different issue later on. So you need to give that confidence to the manager that in removing those processes and optimizing those processes, you are not creating a issue further down the line. So that's what we do. So we build that confidence. So in order to remove those processes, we initially sit down and identify, then try and work through how we are going to remove it, then try to build confidence before we roll it out to the wider network.
You're talking a lot about compliance, and since our viewers are from all over the world, I'm interested to hear what are some of the compliance criteria, specifically locally to Australia, that you're trying to keep whilst you're changing the processes.
Yeah, look, few of the basic compliance elements are, well, it depends on the size of the building as well. Different buildings, different size buildings have tiers in Australia, and based on the tiers, their compliance requirements vary. So you need to cater to those different tiers differently. And a few of the compliance things are like when it comes to trades, how their liability is managed, how their insurances are managed. Then again, when it comes to owners corporations, what are their safety compliance? Are they met? Are they being followed up? Is OHS compliant? And have you followed up with your insurances? Have you got enough coverage? Have you done evaluation? So those sort of things all tie in. And if you're doing a manual process or if you're managing it in a task management platform, you are actively trying to manage them while you can automate 99.9% of it, right? So what we would probably do in those procedures is like ensure that those compliance elements that are well understood within the industry is automated 90% of the time. And then you have a oversight for those compliance. So you ensure that those compliance elements are not missed at the same time.
So for the Strata manager that's watching or listening, how can they imagine that this is working? So you have these documents inside the system, and how does the automation automate 99% of it? Is it like an AI agent that goes through each document and checks the compliance criteria, or how exactly does a Strata manager that's not already using Strata Pages get their hands dirty and start out? How can they imagine this compliance process to work with your tool?
Yeah. So there's two parts to this. So initially, it creates a little bit of work in getting it into the system. So we've created automations for that as well by the compliance being so PDFs or documents being analyzed and then automatically uploaded to the compliance portal. So that part is separate. So once that data is in, then the process becomes easier. So when it comes to the second report, third report, then you already got the data there. Then you're just having an ongoing process of the compliance being managed through the platform, whereas you would get a task ticket either to verify the report. If you're happy with something going out, the email going out to the clients, you just approve it. So that's all you do. So once the report is received, your report summarized, then you pretty much make a decision on if you want to add anything and send that email, or if there's any issues that you're gonna see that you need to edit, or if there's any other documents you want to edit. So things like that by having that oversight to the manager, that gives them a clear view of what they need to work on next. At the same time, again, building that confidence on the manager that they can ensure that they're not missing any of these deadlines just because they've handed something over to AI. So at least the dashboard of what is happening is really important for managers that wants to stay on top of it.
hmm I saw something interesting on your website. You say that agents run the admin, managers run the relationships. I think this summarizes what you've said pretty well. And I was curious to hear, since there is a lot of hype around AI and you see many AI implementers promising you the world, but most of them, they don't deliver. So for a Strata manager that's busy with their processes and at the same time wants to bring in some automation, it might be hard to really separate the solutions that work from those that don't. So I was curious to hear from you, how do you create the proper messaging in order to make it clear to the Strata manager that you're actually helping them? How do you differentiate yourself from the AI hype in your messaging?
Now it's really important. We are not trying to, again, we are not trying to sell a product here. So that's the most important part about it. We are just trying to ensure that we free up strata managers time so they can build their relationship. What I've noticed over time is as we get busier with emails, phone calls, all these, like we keep receiving them, then your tone changes when you speak to your clients. So you're starting to like ruin your own relationship that you have with the client as well. So busier you get, you think your business is improving, but at the same time, your service quality gets impacted. So that what our messaging is directly targeted towards freeing up the time so you can actually give that time to speak and understand. The empathy, emotional intelligence of a manager is really important these days, right? Because our role is just not to manage a building. We at times we act like therapists for these people, these owners as well, because they call you, they tell what sort of problems that they're facing with. They either have financial shortfalls, so you need to work through them, right? Like, so it's just not like they've had a water leak and their building's flooded. So how do we walk through that, right? You don't want to just go, okay, I'll call the insurance company and hang up, because that's not their expectation. They want you to actually listen to them and work through that. So then on the background, someone needs to do that work. So that's the part we want AI to handle while you have that relationship with the client, because they'll remember that conversation that you have moving forward. So that's what we want to build, and that's what our messaging is targeted towards.
True. We've seen two philosophies here with past guests in terms of how they view AI automation. And one past guest said that different strata management companies have different reasons to implement AI. Some of them would implement them to cut costs, as in operate with fewer staff, whereas others, they use AI to help their staff so that the staff can build better relationships with their clients, which is part of what you said. Where would you say that Strata Pages has the biggest impact? Because you're covering various areas of automation, both front desk and the back end, right? Can you walk us through the operating philosophy that you're trying to instill into the strata managers?
Look, it depends on the size of the business as well. So those two philosophies can apply to different sort of businesses that's out there. So if you are looking at those 2 to 4 people businesses that we were talking about, it's really important for them to ensure that relationship stays. So it goes back to what I was talking earlier. So you need to make sure it's a relationship based business, ensure there's no churn. You don't have time to continuously keep going out to get new clients. You need to ensure that your current clients stay. And when it comes to bigger businesses, they can afford churn, and what they want out of running their business is slightly different. They want their employees to be able to run more properties. And if there is churn, then on the other side, they do get more properties as a result of them being a bigger business as well, and they can afford that. So we could cater for either of those businesses. We are designed to cater for both parties, but on a personal level, where strata management is heading, I'm leaning more towards it being a relationship business. If strata management is gonna survive the AI era, that's no doubt about that. But in order for strata managers to survive and to ensure that the industry reputation is protected, we need to make it a reputation-based business, and we need to ensure that we have more face time with the clients.
Yeah, I agree with that. You've mentioned before the podcast that integrating AI solutions with existing Strata software solutions is a chicken and egg problem. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Part of it is one of the challenges is the legacy software systems are not built to integrate with AI systems. Speaking to those systems can be difficult at times. We've slowly realized some workarounds for those. we can automate most of them by bringing some of the data over to our platform, which is helping us manage that slightly better. And those systems are improving over time as well. So hopefully they will reach that point. At the same time, there's a bit of hesitancy on those bigger operators as well in providing integrations due to various different reasons they may have. They may be looking at their own automations, or there may be some hesitancy due to capturing market share. So, but overall, what we figured out is if we are going to be successful in this industry, we need to ensure with minimal data input, we should be able to run the day-to-day operations of what what your email brings. So if we pretty much have the owner information in hand, we should be able to so your owner's corporations and the owner informations in hand, we should be able to run everything seamlessly on my end at this stage.
Totally agreed. So imagine you're in the stage of integrating Strata Pages for the first time with a company. I was curious, how do you measure the baseline that the company is at the moment, let's say in terms of KPIs, so that you can measure the improvement? And maybe connected to that question is, how many of the strata management companies you've worked with actually measure where they're at in terms of performance?
Yeah, a lot of the strata management companies rely on one number, either lots under management or lots per FTE, so lots per full-time employee, and the third one is lot per strata manager. So apart from those three, I haven't seen many of them go into the detailed KPIs that you were referring to, like the success metrics or client retention rates. There are some bigger companies that looks into it, but small operators tend to miss out on some of those client happiness metrics and your even to the point of your reviews online and referral rates. Those sort of things don't get measured regularly, but there are operators out there that does that as well.
Mm-hmm. Since they're not tracking it at the moment, I'm wondering if it's a priority for them, and how do you convince them, if that's the proper word, that it's a priority?
It is a difficult ask to convince them to change that sort of behavior, but getting the basics of so our platform has analytics on how many times those clients have logged in. Those sort of things are recorded when they use the AI bot or which users have logged in. So those sort of things will give them some metrics on client engagement, right? What sort of inquiries come through? Have the email rates dropped over time as a result of integration of these platforms? So those sort of numbers, even if you're not tracking on your end, if a strata management director is not really understanding all those factors that impact, but having a dashboard of those metrics and how they have impacted over time, you will eventually lead them to understand that these are tracking metrics, and we can over time our reports will be able to guide them in the right direction. So when we grow as well, we will be able to provide more support for those clients that wants to work through those numbers as well. But at this stage, it is fairly at a basic level. But those numbers are there, but how much we can put in on that end is fairly limited at this stage, being an early stage startup.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Agreed. What do you think that the future role of a strata manager will look like given all this AI automation? Thinking from the perspective of a 20-year-old that just gets started into the strata management industry, what do you think their role would be?
Their role will be mainly managing relationships. So everything will be pretty much on the back end would be managed by AI. Most of the processes, systems will be managed through AI. So as a result of it, they will have a lot more face time with the client. And yes, it's just more data driven management at the same time, more relationship building, emotional intelligence, as I previously mentioned
Mhm.
as well. So those are the key factors that would come in for the next wave of strata managers. They won't be managing the emails or phone calls, not just administrative tasks. It's going to be more of a relationship business.
If you were to look back on your first day when you started out in the strata management industry, now with all the knowledge that you have and having founded your own business, what advice would you give yourself on that first day when you started out?
It's a tough one. I'd probably tell myself to take it easy. It will all work itself out. But if I've given any advice 6, 7, 8 years back, as when I was starting up in Strata, they wouldn't even be relevant these days with AI. So it's a really tough one.
Agreed, agreed. Very nice. Thank you, Dilshan, for being on the show. Where can people get hold of you on the internet?
Yeah, most likely LinkedIn would be the place to go to.
Hmm.
It's Dilshan Mimanage on LinkedIn, or contact me through the Strata Pages website.
Very well, very well. Thank you for being on the show, Dilshan. I'm looking forward to speaking soon at some point, and it was a pleasure having you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having me here.